welcome back to Minted Million Coins. Today I'm walking you through the exact coins you need to search for right now. And collectors are paying thousands for. It might be sitting in your wallet right now. What if I told you this coin is worth more than gold? Stay tuned because by the end of this video you'll never look at change the same way again. Let's get into it. Before you go, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Minted Million Coins and press the bell icon so you never miss our freshly updated rare coin discoveries.
Imagine opening an old box of coins that has been sitting untouched for decades. Maybe it came from your grandparents. Maybe it was found in an attic, inherited from a family member, or simply forgotten in a drawer. You start looking through the pennies one by one, expecting nothing more than a little history. Then you notice something. The portrait of Liberty is wearing an Indian-style headdress. You turn the coin over, and suddenly, you're looking at a piece of American history that survived the Civil War, the rise of industrial America, the Gilded Age, and more than a century of changing hands. Today, we're going on a journey through 7 Indian head cents, spanning 1859 all the way to 1909s, including the very first year of the series, major reverse changes, a Civil War era issue, a San Francisco rarity, and finally, the last Indian head cent ever minted. And here's what makes this fascinating. These coins aren't all valuable for the same reason. Some are important because they're first-year issues, some because of their historical era, some because of their mint mark, some because of scarcity in higher grades. And some can become dramatically more desirable when collectors discover exceptional preservation, unusual characteristics, or genuine mint errors. So don't assume an old Indian head cent is automatically worth a fortune. Instead, learn what makes the specific coin important. Because when you're searching through old cents, the date is only the beginning. And we're starting with the coin that began it all. 1859, the first Indian head cent. The year is 1859. America is standing on the edge of one of the most turbulent periods in its history. The country is rapidly changing, tensions are rising, and the Civil War is only 2 years away. And right in the middle of this period, the United States Mint introduces a completely new 1-cent design, the 1859 Indian head cent. If you ever encounter one, don't casually toss it into a pile of ordinary old pennies. This is the beginning of the entire Indian head cent story. And there is another reason the 1859 issue immediately deserves your attention. Look at the reverse. Instead of the oak wreath that would soon become familiar to collectors, the first Indian head cent features a laurel wreath surrounding the denomination. That detail is incredibly important, because 1859 isn't simply an early Indian head cent. It's the first-year issue with the original laurel wreath reverse. And that makes it a natural starting point for anyone trying to understand this series. The obverse features Liberty wearing a headdress, while the reverse presents the denomination inside the wreath. But here's where the story becomes even more interesting. The Mint didn't keep this original reverse design for long. The following year, the reverse changed, and that means the 1859 cent represents a very short-lived chapter in the design history of the Indian head cent. Think about what that means when you're searching through an inherited collection. You might have a handful of Indian head cents sitting together. At first glance, they may all look almost identical, but one of them could have the laurel wreath reverse, immediately separating it from the later coins. So if you find an Indian head cent, don't just look at Liberty. Flip it over. The reverse can tell you something extremely important. And that takes us to the next year. 1860, the second coin in our journey, is the 1860 Indian head cent. At first, you might think, it's only 1 year newer. But numismatically, that 1-year difference matters. The Mint changed the reverse design. The laurel wreath was replaced by an oak wreath reverse, accompanied by additional design elements that would become characteristic of the series. So now imagine placing an 1859 and an 1860 Indian head cent side by side. Same basic series, same Liberty portrait, but a completely different reverse identity. That makes these two coins especially interesting to collectors who love design transitions. The 1859 represents the beginning. The 1860 represents the next chapter. And there's something else you should remember when examining either one. Condition matters enormously. An Indian head cent that spent more than a century circulating through pockets, cash registers, stores, and everyday transactions may show heavy wear. Another example might have been protected almost immediately after it was minted. Those two coins can have dramatically different collector appeal. That's why you shouldn't automatically assume that a date alone determines value. The date gets your attention. The condition tells you much more. Look at Liberty's portrait. Examine the headdress. Check the lettering. Study the wreath. Look for damage, cleaning, scratches, corrosion, and unnatural surfaces. And most importantly, don't clean it. That old brown or reddish-brown appearance may look unattractive to someone unfamiliar with coin collecting, but original surfaces can be extremely important to collectors. A harshly cleaned coin can lose much of the appeal it would otherwise have had. So if you're searching an old collection today, remember, don't polish history. Leave the coin alone until you know exactly what you're dealing with. Now we're moving into a completely different chapter of American history. Because the next coin on our list was minted during one of the most dramatic periods the United States has ever experienced. 1861, the first year of the American Civil War. And suddenly, this isn't just a story about coin design anymore. It's a story about a nation divided. In 1861, the United States entered the Civil War. And while armies were preparing for conflict, ordinary Americans were still using money in their everyday lives. That means an 1861 Indian head cent can carry a fascinating connection to one of the most consequential years in American history. Think about the journey that little copper nickel cent could have experienced. It could have passed through the hands of workers, shopkeepers, farmers, families, travelers, people who were living through a country changing around them. And today, that same date can sit quietly inside a collection. The 1861 Indian head cent is therefore interesting not simply because it's old. It's interesting because of what was happening when it was made. But here's an important point. Don't make the mistake of thinking every 1861 cent is automatically a high-dollar rarity. Collectors care about many factors: originality, grade, surface quality, strike, color, eye appeal, and whether the coin has been altered or damaged. Two 1861 cents can share the same date and still be worth very different amounts. That principle will follow us throughout this entire video. And now, let's jump forward. The Civil War has ended. America enters a new period of rapid economic growth and transformation. Factories expand. Railroads connect more parts of the country. Cities grow. Industry accelerates. And eventually, the country enters what historians call the Gilded Age. Now we arrive at another Indian head cent on our list. 1878. The 1878 Indian head cent belongs to a completely different America than the 1861 issue. The Civil War is no longer the immediate backdrop. The country is rebuilding and transforming. And industrial America is becoming increasingly powerful. This is why collecting coins can be so much more interesting than simply looking at numbers. Every date represents a moment. Every coin has a timeline. And every surviving example has physically traveled through history. Imagine holding an 1878 cent today. You're holding a piece of metal produced nearly a century and a half ago. But the real question is, how well did it survive? That is where condition becomes crucial. A heavily worn example tells us it circulated. A sharper example tells a very different story. And a truly exceptional example with strong original surfaces can attract serious collector attention. When you're examining an 1878 Indian head cent, don't simply stare at the date. Study the entire coin. Look for a sharp portrait. Check the wreath. Examine the lettering. Look around the fields for scratches or marks. Watch for signs of cleaning. And inspect the color. Because copper coins are especially sensitive to their environment. Their surfaces can change dramatically over time. Storage conditions, moisture, chemicals, handling, and cleaning can all affect the appearance of an old cent. And this is one reason professional grading exists. A coin that looks pretty good to an inexperienced eye might have problems that significantly affect collector desirability. Meanwhile, a coin that appears ordinary at first may have surprisingly strong original surfaces. So don't judge an Indian head cent in just 5 seconds. Give it a serious examination. Because we're not finished. We're moving now toward the 20th century. America is approaching a new era. The country is becoming increasingly modern. And our next Indian head cent comes from a year that symbolizes that transition. 1901. The turn of the century. Think about how different America looked in 1901 compared with 1859. The United States had experienced the Civil War, Reconstruction, industrial expansion, massive technological changes, and enormous population growth. The Indian head cent, meanwhile, had remained a familiar part of everyday American life. And that's what makes the 1901 issue fascinating. It isn't the beginning. It isn't the end. It's a survivor from the mature period of the series. By this point, the Indian head cent had already become deeply established in American commerce. People didn't need to think about its history every time they spent one. It was simply money. But that's exactly what makes old coins so fascinating today. The person who spent an Indian head cent in 1901 probably wasn't thinking, one day, collectors will carefully study this coin. To them, it was just a cent. Maybe it bought something small. Maybe it was placed in a cash drawer. Maybe it was saved in a pocket. Maybe it was thrown into a jar and forgotten. And somehow, more than a century later, it can end up back in your hands. That's the magic of coin collecting. But now we're approaching one of the most exciting transitions in our entire list, because we're leaving the Philadelphia issues behind and heading west. 1908 Look carefully at that date. Then look for the letter S. That tiny mint mark is the detail you absolutely cannot ignore. The 1908 Indian head cent was struck at the San Francisco Mint, and suddenly, the story becomes more interesting. Why? Because mint marks can dramatically change how collectors view a coin. A date by itself doesn't always tell the whole story. The mint mark can reveal where the coin was produced. And in some series, that small letter can make an enormous difference in scarcity and collector demand. San Francisco issues can be especially interesting because they represent production outside the Philadelphia Mint. And when you're searching old Indian head cents, the difference between a Philadelphia issue and a San Francisco issue can sometimes be as simple as one tiny letter. That's why I always recommend slowing down when you search. Don't just read the date. Look beneath it. Look around the lower area of the coin. Find out whether there is a mint mark. And don't assume that a tiny letter is unimportant. Sometimes the smallest detail on a coin can be the detail that changes everything. Now, with the 1908 Indian head cent, condition becomes even more important. A circulated example can be interesting and collectible, but a well-preserved example can be considerably more desirable. And that's why collectors don't simply ask, how old is it? They ask, how rare is it? Where was it minted? What condition is it in? Does it have original surfaces? Does it have damage? Is it properly attributed? Could there be an error or unusual variety? These are the questions that turn a casual coin search into serious numismatic research. And now, we're reaching the final coin. The coin that closes the entire Indian head cent story. The coin that marks the end of an era. 1909 the last Indian head cent ever minted. Just think about that for a moment. The series began with the 1859 issue. 50 years later, the story reaches its final chapter with the 1909 Indian head cent. And there is something incredibly emotional about that. For half a century, the Indian head cent had been part of American life. It existed through enormous national changes. It saw the country move from the 19th century into the 20th. And now, the design was about to disappear. The 1909 S Indian head cent is therefore more than simply another old penny. It represents the final San Francisco issue and the closing chapter of the Indian head cent era. And if you have one, don't rush past it. Stop, look carefully. Check the date. Look for the S mint mark, study the surfaces, and then ask yourself one question. How did this coin survive? Because the story of a coin doesn't end when it leaves the mint. That's actually where the story begins. A coin can be minted in San Francisco in 1909, enter circulation, travel hundreds or thousands of miles, pass through countless hands, disappear into someone's collection, remain forgotten for decades, and eventually emerge again. And that is why the final Indian head cent is so fascinating. It represents an ending, but it also represents survival. And now let's bring the entire 7-coin journey together. We started with 1859, the first Indian head cent and the famous Laurel wreath reverse. Then came 1860, bringing the oak wreath reverse and marking an important early design transition. Then 1861, placing the Indian head cent directly in the first year of the American Civil War. Then 1878, carrying the series into the industrial transformation of the Gilded Age. Then 1901, a coin from the dawn of a new century. Then 1908S, taking us to the San Francisco Mint. And finally, 1909S, the last Indian head cent ever minted. 7 dates. 7 windows into American history, and potentially 7 very interesting coins to search for. But here's the part I really want you to remember. Don't start with the price. Start with identification. Start with the date. Then check the mint mark. Then examine the condition. Then look for varieties or errors. And only after that should you start thinking about value. Because online coin videos sometimes make it sound as if every old penny is secretly worth thousands. That's not how the real market works. A coin's value can depend on rarity, grade, demand, originality, certification, and the specific characteristics of that individual example. One worn coin may be worth relatively little. Another coin with the same date in exceptional condition could be much more desirable. And a genuine mint error or recognized variety can create an entirely different situation. So if you find an Indian head cent that looks unusually sharp, unusually clean, or simply different from the others in your collection, don't immediately sell it. And don't clean it. And don't scrape it. And definitely don't polish it. Take clear photographs. Record the date. Record the mint mark if present. Compare it with reliable references. And if you believe you've discovered something significant, consider having the coin examined by a reputable numismatist or professional grading service. Because the most expensive mistake in coin collecting isn't always missing a rare coin. Sometimes it's accidentally damaging one. Now imagine going back to that old box of coins. You pull out the first cent. You turn it over. Laurel wreath. Then you find 1860. Oak wreath. Then 1861. And suddenly you're holding a coin connected to the opening year of the Civil War. You continue searching. 1908S. And then 1909S. The final Indian head cent. That progression is more than a list of dates. It's a timeline of America. From the eve of the Civil War to the modernizing 20th century, from the first Laurel wreath reverse to the final San Francisco issue. And that's why these coins remain so captivating. They aren't just pieces of metal. They are survivors. Survivors of commerce. Survivors of time. Survivors of countless hands and countless stories. And somewhere in the United States today, there are still Indian head cents sitting quietly in collections, inherited coin boxes, old albums, antique stores, estate collections, and forgotten drawers. Some may be common circulated examples. Some may be beautifully preserved. And some may have characteristics that make them far more interesting than they first appear. So the next time you see an old penny, don't automatically dismiss it. Turn it over, read the date, look for the mint mark, examine the surfaces, and most importantly, know what you're looking at before you decide what it's worth. Because the difference between an ordinary old coin and an extraordinary collectible can sometimes be hidden in a tiny detail. A date, a mint mark, a reverse design, a surviving original surface, or a genuine error. And that is the real thrill of searching. You never know what the next coin might reveal. Maybe the next one will be another ordinary penny. Or maybe you'll turn over an old Indian head cent and discover that you've just found a piece of American history that deserves a much closer look. So check those old coin jars. Check inherited collections. Check your grandparents' old albums. Check the forgotten boxes in your attic. And if you find an Indian head cent from 1859, 1860, 1861, 1878, 1901, 1908S, or 1909S, don't rush past it. Take a second look. Because these 7 coins tell one incredible story. A story that began in 1859 and ended in 1909. 50 years. One iconic design. And millions of surviving pieces of history waiting to be discovered. If you enjoyed this journey through America's Indian head cents, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next coin discovery. And before you leave, tell me in the comments, which Indian head cent would you most want to find the 1859 first-year issue, the Civil War era 1861, the 1908S San Francisco issue, or the final 1909S? You never know. The next old penny you pick up might be the one that makes you stop, look twice, and realize you've been holding a remarkable piece of American history all along.